do chapters 13 to the end. I think that's 24 chapters. And I'm so excited to talk. I almost got ahead of myself. I'll mention the comment that sparked the idea, but just to kind of start us off, Frank Baum published this in the early 1900s, and this is the first American colonial fairy tale for American colonials living on the continent of North America, essentially, specifically the United States of in North America. I specify that it's really important to mention that because otherwise you can easily ignore the worldview of legitimately every other culture that is existing in this space that has fairy tales of their own variety. Um, Now, the printing press was very much a European thing on the American continent because technically oral storytelling is it's the most oral storytelling is the most supreme of storytellings because it comes with the person who's telling it, so it transfers its resonance. Think in terms of speaking versus music. People are more likely to remember a song than they are speech simply because it's packaged differently. A song is a connected, unified sound that hardly changes. Oh no, audio. I'm probably on TikTok, huh? But hold on, guys. Let me see. Oh no, can you guys hear me on anything? Probably not. Let me end that really. No, I didn't mean to end the live. I didn't mean to end the live. I didn't mean to end the live. No. I hate it when I do that. That's killing me. Let me see if I can go back. Let me see if I can go back. No. No. What am I doing? Where did I go? Hi, cute book. Huh? That's odd. It is on. Hold on. I just hit the wrong button because I was gonna fix it over on OBS. That's all. And then I hit the wrong button. I did that before too. It's killing me. Killing me, Smalls. Oh, but you guys on. Oh, I really have. Let me see. Let me change this view really quick. Okay, that's fine. I had just canceled my old. No. Okay, we'll kill that one. Okay, let me see if the sound changes on here. Okay. Boom, boom. Why isn't this hit? Boom, boom. Yeah, no. Okay. That should be. But it's not actually. Let me see. Boom, boom. Oh no. Is that just down or something? That's so terrible. Okay. I think I fixed it. Let me take it down a notch. I think. Okay. Thumbs up, anybody, if you can hear me. I think everybody should be able to hear me. Yeah. Now is Mariah loud? Oh, I hope I'm not loud. Days to dream and days to lose. Okay, how about over here on Patreon? Let me see. I don't have the chat open on Zoom. Okay, and also I'm gonna be sending the link to Zoom again. I'm so sorry, y'all. Over on Patreon, I accidentally ended the wrong thing. Mess. I know. Absolute mess. I was trying to end the film that I was doing. I was recording because the sound wasn't working. So, and I'm proud of the noise. I'm proud of the report. I lived this one wild life. I ripped it apart. Okay, I think I can start over now. Runners with no apology. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Midnight Scholar Book Club. We had technical difficulties, but I am back now. We are covering The Wizard of Oz. I think everyone can hear me, so give me a thumbs up everywhere. On TikTok, we got a thumbs up. Waiting to see a thumbs up in the Patreon chat, if anybody can throw one. Or in the, got thumbs up on Zoom, so we're good there. I think everybody can hear me then. We are excellent. Okay, so I started a whole spiel. I was so excited. But let me jump now back into it. So we're covering The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Frank Baum. This was published in 1900, exactly on the dot. And this was the first American colonial fairy tale. So it's important to kind of label it that way because there are other fairy tales going on the continent at this time. They're told orally. This is the first one that's been written for a colonial American audience. Whereas, like, the children in England had Peter Pan coming out in about 4 years from here on, right? They also had things like Gulliver's Travels. They had like Treasure Island. The Imperial Nation has stories for children and fairy tales that are kind of surfacing through writers of the day. But American colonials, they're still really building out a literacy canon and stuff like that. With their printing press and stuff. And so Frank Baum, who was really into stage play, he was into theater. He seemed to be one of those like failed sons of an aristocrat. You know, like his father was very much invested and making money in the industrial landscape of America. Okay, so his dad had money. His dad had money. Okay, and Frank was just running around like living his life. You know, he was the artistic child. I think he had three brothers or something and some sisters, and he came off as the one who just followed his dreams through life, and he was very much supported doing that. So it's very much giving similar to like James Barrie. They're situated in a space of privilege, right? Either by birth or by birth order, sometimes both. So I'm still having trouble hearing you on Patreon. Oh no. That's right. I'm so sorry. Patreon. Okay, got you. I thought y'all could hear me over here. I fixed it. I fixed it. So you all should be able to hear me now. But when it comes to the birth order of Frank Baum, you know, like he was clearly in a situation where he had the chance to see whatever was calling him in his heart, a chance to see that out. And that kind of circulated, or not circulated, but accumulated into a series of Oz. So he just took children to Oz. And I think there's like 13 stories. I think he wrote 6 or 7 of them. And then some others wrote. His dad was daddy. His dad definitely was like, do whatever you want, Frank. Now, I don't know if that comes from a place of pure love or a place of getting somebody who otherwise is kind of a catastrophe walking out the door. You know, families, you know, his families were colonial agents in the East. They were the ones who were making lots of money and also about to bankrupt everyone, and were also scamming all of the immigrants to go out west to colonize for them and like murder indigenous people. You know what I mean? Like everyone's a cog in that system. So you never know really what part of the cog people are in, because that sometimes makes people evil by general nature, but not, or by nurture, but not by nature. So, in other words, the person is kind, and because they've never had to interact with the cruelness of the world that they create, they never quite. They don't appear to be kind. They appear to be like just ignorant of their devastation. But then but that's not exactly a safe place to be, because once that person has to meet themselves, it's kind of like I just got done watching the Odyssey. It's like the Odyssey. You have to meet yourself, and that's not a journey you want to go on with someone who's like still really kind while living in the middle of evil. You know, it's like, oh, I didn't know, because now they have to justify that. Now they have to go through the trial of, do I let go of my old way, or do I um double down in who I was and make an excuse for this harm that I've caused that I didn't know I caused. Like, that's a long trek back to self. So his family is in there. His family's in the middle of it. they're in the cog, they're in the system as it's building out what we now know is as America and the structure and the infrastructures that we have, right? Like, we've seen what the order has kind of patterned out to, and it's, if anything, it does look an awful lot like Emerald City in Oz. I'll get to that in a minute. But I just wanted to kind of give us that briefing and mention a few comment that came in about the Wizard of about this. Oh man, it was gone. Wait, a note in time. Do you mind typing it out again? What did you say? Because that live got deleted. But your comment, man, it had led me down a path. You said something, and I don't remember what it was. So if you could remind me, I'd be ever so appreciative. But yeah, I'm going to jump into today we're covering chapters 1 through 12. By the end of this month, we'll finish 13 to 14. So that's at the last Tuesday of August this month. I don't have a calendar on me oh, yes, I do. Baum's perspective was much less cynical than Barry's. That was the comment. Yes, that's what's going to lead us into the conversation today. I'm listening to a song and it's like, this is what you asked for. Heavy is the crown. August 25th will be the day that we do book club. We'll finish it up. So that's in 2-3 weeks. Yeah, we'll finish this. Now, I wanted to launch into the conversation and then we'll do the discussion in about like 40 minutes or so. We'll have like a nice hour to chat. Baum's perspective was much less cynical than Barry's. So, in talking about Barry's Peter Pan, which would come 4 years after this is published, okay, is like really a fairy tale for imperial children. I mean, the Darlings really do represent the kind of new class of family, the new idea of what it's supposed to look like. Having a family is a financial decision. The mother keeps the account. The mother organizes the children. The mother even has to look over their active imagination, which might take them away at any moment in time. The father is responsible for letting his active imagination go. I don't know what Mr. Darling was supposed to represent. I guess he was supposed to represent the folly of the old ways, because he was raised Latin, and in the world that Barry's in, everyone is supposed to be very sensible and let go of those things as they move towards the industrial age. And a lot of the aristocrats and the upper middle class, I'll say, like, they're the genteel class still, but the Darlings at the lower tier of that. So these are all people with jobs, people who work jobs like banking, people who work in all of the nice white collar jobs. They're not collecting fish out of the sea and trying to figure out how to feed people. They are pushing papers around to some extent. That's his social standing. And Barry was kind of writing a fairy tale about that class of people, about and that's the idea. That's the overall idea of the type of person that lives here. Any child could be a darling. Any darling, parent could be any of the parents here, right? These are the ideals, the prototypes, so to speak. And I'm not going to say that Barry or in this case Baum went out to create prototypes or anything like that. This is just what happens. Just like Harry Potter created a prototype. That was a new age one. Hi, Josh. So just like these prototypes come about for the most part. I can't say that this is intended. It's usually a clandestine thing, but it's because the author is capturing a very specific cultural thread that seems to be washing over all of the society. And that's, we call them these days trends and stuff like that. The cynicism was plotting, the gag sad. Some people will never get it. The cynicism was plotting. Do you mean in The Wizard of Oz, or do you mean Barry's? Just curious. And so what was I saying? Oh yeah, so Barry's writing to a very European audience. The imperial nightmare for children there is that they get swept away, and I mean that's real for them. They were getting swept away all the time. And generally speaking, when the horror story that exists at home, when you identify with home, is leaving home, right? And whereas the imperial, or no, not the imperial, the American colonial children, their horror stories tend to be centered around the outside of home, because it's the foreign place, the foreign land that comes, and it comes at me, it eats me. And here we have Dorothy getting fucked up by a natural disaster, right? A tornado. It's the outside world that came to get her. And it's nature, the nature of this land that she has no roots in. She has no bearings in. She's not attached to it at all. Kansas to her is very gray. There is no color. There's no life. She doesn't recognize life there. She doesn't even recognize she doesn't have parents, right? It's like it is the orphan story again. And that's where it starts. Now, oh, I was gonna say I don't want to do spoilers, but we all read. I just came back from a movie, so in my mind I'm like, okay, no spoiling, no spoiling this, no spoiling that. But I forgot we read the book, so we can talk all about these things. I wanted to mention, because I don't want to spend too much time, um, chatting. Did I mention Baum's a little bit about his background? Oh, let me get into that. So, a little bit about his background. It's not that well. I haven't discovered that deeply. I'm still in the shallow parts of getting to know him. But his family, I think, hail from more eastern, maybe I think New York City or Philadelphia, around that far east. And now he went out to like North Dakota and such during the a little bit of a migration. He tried to open up a store out there and stuff like that, but he really didn't gain a lot of attraction as an individual, or I think get his footing in, until he started working in theater. Now he wrote a book about how to set storefronts, and this is why apparently he failed at like every endeavor that he did. That's why I'm like, at a loss for words to be like he did this and he did this. They were all kind of like failed projects, but something that he learned along the way was how to set a scene. And so he wrote a book on how to stage storefront windows, and I wanted to read that because it's actually quite interesting, because he did a lot of work in Broadway when it comes to setting scenes in theater, and that's where he got it from. And it's so interesting to me, that so far the two figures we're looking at, James Barry and Frank Baum, both of them have namesakes as well that I'm very familiar with, and it's both of them have a last name that starts with B. This is so funny. Anyways, I'm just noticing some synchronicities on my end. But both of them also went into theater. They were working in the theater, and both of them have stories that came out of that, and the stories also ended up as novels. In this case, it was the novel ended up as a stage play, I think, and in James Barrie's Peter Pan, the stage play ended up a novel. Um, but it's so interesting because like this is happening during that time, and I think we're just seeing a renaissance of children's literature to some degree, and the tie-in to that with theater and how media is captivating people, also speaks to the era of time that people are in, where they're able to enjoy entertainment. They're able to feel safe enough to take in these stories and this whimsy, and they're wanting to get to know the world around them and their imagination to some degree. But because, we also have to take into account the reactions to these things. And the reaction by far was it's for children, right? Which tells you that a lot of the adults weren't watching this sort of stuff and feeling captivated. Some obviously were. You have artists. Artists can always spot art and they always enjoy art. You know what I mean? But the general public, what stories resonate with people and how do they identify? It seems like this one was picking up children. A lot of these stories and a lot of the whimsy that was told was really only captivating the minds of children. And I think that that has something else to say that's worth thinking about, right? Maybe we'll bring that up during book club, because it's worth asking, what happens to the minds of an entire generation that's captivated by media. We kind of see it now. There's a lot of people who live out media, right? They find a character that they like on TV and they become that character and they see life through that lens, and it's almost like a way of surrogate parenting. They don't have to make choices and thoughts. They can kind of live through an alter ego, rather than a developing ego. So that's interesting because, like, fairy tales do that, and children who grow up on fairy tales and books, and they want to see it in the on a show, and they see it in theater, and then theater turns to film. Those children also grow up, but they never stop wanting to see their favorite stories told, from theater to film. And, what does that say about us if we forget that? I don't mean to throw out existential, yeah, I don't mean to throw out existential questions at you guys. Also, me, this is an existential place. That's all that we do here. Okay, so I want to hop into the story a little bit and kind of give us a little bit of an overview of where we started and where we ended up, and then we'll move over to discussion. Now, if anybody over on TikTok wants to join, you can always jump over Midnight Scholar Society. Go ahead and join, and you can join the live. There's a link to the Zoom there. I mean, it's everywhere, but that's probably the easiest way to go about it if you want to join discussion, because while I do record those replays do go up over on Midnight Scholar. So the Patreon has a host of collections that you can peruse over there. So that's all I'll say about it. Let's see. Oh, chapter 1. All I said was, that's so drab. I was looking at in my version. I love mine being illustrated. I have the other version of what her life is like in Kansas and what her family looks like, and it's just so fucking depressing. But I just wanted to give a shout out to this copy of the book. It's Mima Lima illustrated, and I'm just going to show you guys one reason of why I love book art and why I think everybody should get book art and also highlight and color inside of it and stuff. Where it deems necessary, because I annotate these. But this is why. Because this one came with glasses from the house. This is so funny. When I got to this section, and these popped out. I'm telling you, I love book art. It's just, I don't know, something about annotating this and thinking about like grandkids or some other child somewhere, even my own kids to some degree, discovering the book and my annotations inside. Like maybe it'll be a little treasure hunt or something. Who knows? But yeah, that's my little spiel on why everybody should get book art when you can. Get this stuff with the illustrations and the fun shit in it, and also like make it yours. Draw on it. Don't be afraid. Shit's cool. Okay. All I have to say, let me see. Chapter 1, very interesting. Chapter 2, we get to the Council of Munchkin. So number 1, the tornado takes Dorothy to Oz. Yeah. Number 2, we get to the Council of Munchkins, and I have a few things highlighted here that I wanted to share. I said, I don't know, Dorothy. Sounds like a setup. I wanted to highlight a few of these moments just in case anybody had anything that hit them. So when she was with the Munchkins and they welcome her, and she's a much noble sorceress, they've just automatically been like, you killed somebody, so you must also be powerful. And then the way that they invite her into, there we go. The way that they invite her, there we go. I've got like 3 different videos going on, and I'm out of the film for one of them. This is crazy. Anyways, sorry all of you on the recording. You will just have to see half of my face. Yeah, but it's I wanted to bring up it's a pattern of when meeting new people, the way that people seem to weigh Dorothy on a scale based on what she's wearing or what she's done, and then they automatically insert her into society, or assign her a level of power. So it's when the Munchkins do it, the mice do it to the Tin Man after he murders that cat, which we're going to talk about that because that was wild. Let me see. Somebody else does it. Oh, they consistently do it to Dorothy because obviously the one witch, the Witch of the North or something, she kissed her on the forehead, right, and gave her a little marking so that everyone knows that Dorothy has been blessed in some way, shape, or form. In which case, too, this lady's blessing is so heavy to like make things move in this society, and yet she is not strong enough to keep people in her domain safe. I thought that was such an interesting aspect of Oz because I by this time, by like chapter 3 or chapter 4, yeah, by chapter 3, after Dorothy's left and she's about to meet the Scarecrow and stuff, and he's going to go on with her. I start thinking to myself, like, Oz has created this kind of plane, and on this plane, people have power. Sometimes people fall into power, Dorothy. People presume they don't have power that they do have. That would be the Lion, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man, right? Because of the circumstances of their birth, how they were made, or the circumstances of their journey through life. The Cowardly Lion, well, he's not the lion, but the Scarecrow, he was made to believe he doesn't have brains, right? And so therefore he cannot cognitively deduce anything, or brains is what makes you capable of thinking. The Tin Man, his experience in life caused him to rust, right, to turn into, he got hacked apart piece by piece. And then we've got the lion. I can't remember how he ended up the way that he was. I think it's it's one of those things, like, he's blinded by himself. Like, he has to meet the ego, and he doesn't know how to meet his own ego, so he has to act out what he thinks masculinity is, or what he thinks courage is, right, rather than just being it. We meet all of these characters who, for whatever reason, decide that they don't have power, even though it's very clear that they have power. It's people who have fallen into it, people who have it but don't use it at all, or use it in what appears to us to be benign ways, right? They pass off like they have the power to delegate. That's kind of how I see the witches and Oz. Like, their power is delegation. They don't do things; they get other people to do things. That sort of a thing, which comes with its own mode of manipulation. You have people who have power over nature, and what types of nature. Like, the Wicked Witch of the West has power over the animal nature of people and animals, whereas Oz has power over people's domesticated nature, their need for rules and order, right? I thought that was so interesting, because, like, at this point, um Baum is kind of inviting children to his perspective of what the world is like, what the wild world is like, and how to navigate it. Follow your yellow brick road. Don't pay attention to all of these other things. I'm paying attention to all these things, and I'm like, oh, that's odd. That's odd. But he's like, just be Dorothy. Follow the yellow brick road. Know that everything will turn out well, because you will meet evil people. You will meet people who aren't necessarily evil, but don't exactly have a lot of wits of their own, or people who are transactional and what's the word that I'm looking for? Where it's a little different than transactional, but it's like people who are willing to use you because you seem like a opportunity. People who are opportunistic. There we go. So that you just seem like an opportunity, and they don't mean harm by it, but you look like you fit the part, so they just assigned you that part. That happens. Let me see. We rescue the Woodman, who is the Tin Man. Then we get to the Cowardly Lion. I'm moving us through the chapters. We meet him. Oh man, I want to tell you guys before we get to the Great Oz, or that journey. Where's the? Yeah, the mice aren't there yet. But when I got to the Poppy part, I fell asleep and I had the weirdest fucking like fucking fever dream. And it was early in the morning. I was listening to it, and then I fell asleep, and I had a fever dream. And then I got up, and I was like, "Fuck! What am I, the lion? Did I fall asleep in the land of the poppies?" And I was getting so tired too. I was like, "I don't like this. I don't like this symbology. What's going on here?" Um, let's see. Yeah, they do some. There's quite a few moments. I'm skipping past most of these because I figure we'll probably, if they meant something to others, we'll talk about them. Before the poppies, there's quite a bit that happens in which we get to see that some people say that they are cowardly, or some people have no brains, or some people. There are many opportunities where our three. I like to think of them as the three knights. I'll get to that in a second, but I like to think of them as three knights: the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion, because they're on this journey with Dorothy, who is our hero. And they are also gallant. Like, the Tin Man wants to do good, the Scarecrow wants to do good, the Lion wants to do good. So they're gallant at heart, right? So that's what makes them knights. They just all think that there's something broken with them, and I like to think of them that way because Dorothy reminds me of what the story after Bluebeard. So Bluebeard is the man that marries that woman, and she's not supposed to go in the basement. When she does, she discovers all his dead wives, and then she's like, buys some time for her brothers. I think there's three of them who come to rescue her. She's like up in a tower, like praying, to God. She's like doing her prayers before he kill, before she dies, but she's really biding time. And then her brothers come. They slay Bluebeard or Blackbeard. I can't remember the guy, which color his beard was. And off they go, presumably back to her hometown or something like that. And so Dorothy is kind of like reminds me of like, okay, they slayed Bluebeard or Blackbeard, whichever one his name is, and now they're on the way back home. And so Oz is this strange world between what she just experienced and the way home. And she's with these knights, her brothers, and she sees them a little differently than how she thought of them initially. Maybe like initially she wouldn't think that one of them thinks he's stupid, or that one feels like he doesn't have a heart because he had some mishap with a woman and all that kind of stuff. And then one of them, who seems like the biggest one, who roars and puts on a show all the time, is the one who wishes he had courage. Like he feels like he's a coward. These are the types of things you would find out about somebody as you travel along with them and as you get to know them on a journey. And so it's this is kind of to me like Baum's world, where he's in his own mind, navigating the innocence as a child would be like Dorothy is the maiden, so she represents the most innocence. And then the parts of ourselves that are growing, like how do you journey in from childhood to adulthood? Well, you have lots of failures, moments where you feel heartless, and think about the reflection. For me, when I reflect back, sometimes I'm like, oh, I was heartless there. And other times I'm like, no, context matters. I was heartless because I was in a situation where hearts were not my heart was not in the equation. It never would have been, because it was not safe to be. So of course, and to someone, if you look at this from afar, it can seem like I was cold or something like that. And it's like, well, that's because I was not connected, because it was not safe. So of course someone gets the cold remark or the cold feeling, because they are not a safe person, and yet they are grasping for my warmth, right? Only to take it and to possibly burn me with it, which is wild. So, like context, sometimes you have to go on a journey with yourself to really be able to parent yourself and parent your own innocence. Like there are some aspects of you that were innocent to what you were doing as you were becoming an adult, right? But that and this happens naturally, the more that you learn things about yourself, and the more you learn about the world, the more your perspective expands, the more you see yourself in a different light. And sometimes you see yourself and you are surprised at how gallant you are. And sometimes you see yourself and you see how you chose to survive. And that weighs different for everybody. That is a collection of actions and what that amounts to. And sometimes it amounts to a lot to atone for. And sometimes it amounts to a lot that people have to atone for. You were done dirty, and you survived this, and you survived it unwittingly. You didn't know. You were like Dorothy. You didn't know that all that was happening. But as it all came to be, and as it all fell apart, you came to see what it really was, and it was ugly. There's a lot of that that happens in life, and how we go about that, navigate it, and how we come out the other end, right? How do you tell that story symbolically? And so I'm thinking this is kind of like what Baum's doing, kind of like what Barry's doing as well. I think we all do it naturally. We tell the story of us, and we tell the story of our perspective of how we see things. And that has context in its own, like no one will ever know what that story really is to the author. They just know what it means to themselves. So I think that's kind of what The Wizard of Oz is. I just want you guys to know my view of that going in, because here's where I think things got interesting. And it's chapter 9. When we get to the Queen of the Field Mice. So the woodman, he sees this field mice running, and this big giant cat, running after it. And so, although he had no heart, he knew it was wrong for the wild cat to try to kill such a pretty harmless creature. So the woodsman raised his axe, and as the wild cat ran by, he gave it a quick blow that cut the beast's head clean off from its body, and it rolled over at the feet into two pieces. So obviously he cut this cat's head off, and I thought to myself, that's some crazy logic. This is our Tin Man, and the Tin Man represents he has no heart, right? And I thought that this was like a clever aspect, because so far we've seen the Tin Man go, he has no heart, he has no heart, and then he says things like, oh, what a small creature, I should help it. Oh, this is happening, I should help these people. Like, he's always looking out for others, especially those that are smaller than him. He doesn't want to step on an ant and harm it, so he really thinks about how, how to be careful. He strikes me as a man who's broken someone else's heart, and he was so distraught and shattered by that it made him freeze. He had no idea that his action had caused such harm, that he was frozen. That's the 10, right? He's frozen in fear of his own power. And the heart is what regulates power. This is where we get electricity from. So this is a man who's terrified of his ability to wield his own power. This could be an accident that happened that maimed someone. It could be anything, honestly. There's a lot that people are very fragile. We know that it was he had a girl. He had a gal, I think, right? I can't remember. Let me see. Oh, I'm not going to go back. But I know maybe somebody else can remind me. But I remember he had a gal, and that didn't go so well. And so he needs a heart so that he can go back and actually interact with romance again. At least that was his logic to some degree. But I wanted to point out that he has empathy for things that are smaller than him, but he has no empathy for things that are like him. And that's his issue. He obviously, in some way, shape, or form, was just doing what he believed was his nature, his natural way, and caused harm. The wildcat's obviously doing what is its nature. It's hunting for food, and so it's about to cause harm unto this mouse. And so he has no empathy for himself, and what he sees is himself out in nature. But it gives all of his empathy to what he sees as a victim. And then we have here this funny Tin Man, she answered. So this queen has been saved, the little mouse queen. She's like, I'm the queen of the mice, right? So she runs over. Her little mice people come over, and they're like, Your Majesty, we thought you were going to die. And she's like, no, this funny Tin Man, she answered, killed the wildcat and saved my life. So hereafter you must all serve him and obey his slightest wish. And I was like, man, the issue of being a savior. She just enslaved herself and all these other mice to this Tin Man. He has all the power. And do you see how the cycle starts? Because who is he likely to harm if they're always running about below his feet, these tiny things who don't have any power of their own anymore? They were right about to put themselves into harm's way, pulling out the biggest wildcat out of a poppy bush, because they're the ones who helped take the lion out of the poppy field. So they're literally about to go risk their lives. I assume that they also could possibly be, messed up by the poppies. But anyways, they go and creep in and pull him out and everything. And he's the bigger cat that could honestly probably eat a swarm of them. But my point is that his lack of empathy for himself means that he's always emotionally off calibrated. So he causes these imbalances where people give him way too much power, and then he then puts them in harm's way, which freezes him, and then he doesn't want power. So then instead of actually feeling that power with his, feeling it and just addressing that, he's trying to go through principle or logic. And that's what really made me realize that he was a knight. Legitimately, he's dressed in tin. He uses logic to navigate situations, because when he felt his feelings got hurt so badly, he decided not only to not cause harm, but also to not feel. And it's in that not feeling that has led him to an imbalance of power yet again. And so it's so clever the way that it's just riddled in here. Let me see, the Guardian of the Gate. Do I have anything down here? Yes. Here's the lion. We've got one. Did I have a one for the Scarecrow? I might have, but I think it's in the back somewhere. We don't have to go over the Scarecrow. I don't remember what he was up to anyways. So I have always thought of myself very big and terrible. So this is chapter 10, I think, Guardian of the Gate. And this is the lion speaking. I have always thought myself very big and terrible. Yet such things as flowers came near to killing me, and such small animals as mice have saved my life. How strange it all is. This lion's like, oh man, I'm so big and powerful, and yet a flower almost took me out, and then these little motherfuckers saved me. Are you fucking kidding? I can't comprehend how this is possible because he's so egotistical, right? He reminds me of in the Odyssey. We have Odysseus who he prays to Athena. Odysseus. So that means like that's his god. Like Athena, he really prides hunting. And I think Christopher Nolan got this really well, is that he shows you the sacredness of Odysseus's hunt, the way that he connects with what he is hunting, how he goes about it, that it is a meditative and sacred act. It is a holy act for him. And so that's because he is, and he prays to the goddess of Athena. He has achieved Athena level wisdom. He can channel that energy really well. He can tap into it by a natural talent, right? Now, this ties into Lord of the Flies. Occasionally, people, because they're talented in an area and it is attached to their ego and they live in such a small pond, or they even see their feet in a big pond. Anyway, my point is that their ego can become so big that once you believe that the world, in the whole world, the best talent is the one that you have because you're really good at it and no one else can beat you. And if someone tries to, you will use your talent to destroy them, to show that your talent is better than all other talents. Do you see how that is like that's an egoic issue. It's one that wraps round and round and round and justifies itself consistently. So in Odysseus's example, he ends up going to Troy and finding a way to unleash hell upon the Trojans, all because a woman didn't want to be with the man she rightfully fled from, and the brother of that man wants more money, and so to if I can fuck up their trade routes, then I can have those. And it throws all of Greece into chaos. All of it into chaos. And so Odysseus sees all of this, and his thrill for the hunt, I think Nolan captures this really well in film. His thrill for the hunt outweighs his ability to see the bigger picture. This is what happens when people have like a neuroses around their ego, or they have an obsession, like they're so holy about whatever it is that their talent is, or whatever their god-given talent is, that they fail to see God in everything. They can only see it in their talent. It's like the spiritualist, everybody's terrified of people who like have no spiritual aptitude. This is somebody who has spiritual aptitude and they've been consumed by it. That's scarier. It's like, meeting a wizard out in the field. That's Odysseus. He's a wizard out in the field. He's totally sentient. He has a god inside of him, and he doesn't know when to let it go and when to be human. That makes him terrifying because it means that he believes that he is omniscient and all-knowing, not that he has connection to one. And so this is kind of the lion's issue, is that he has been given all of this like power, but he doesn't actually know what to do with it. But the power in itself is like a God-given gift. So he's like completely oblivious to like how small things in the world can be powerful. He's like, no, only big is powerful. I know that because that's my gift. I'm big. I am big and terrible. He's ruled by these words. He's ruled by whatever the lion has put on a pedestal. It's the same thing as what Odysseus put Athena on a pedestal. I'm telling you, it's dangerous. So they go to a farmhouse, right? And I think they go inside. Or Dorothy's like, we need to eat some fucking food. We're gonna go ask for some hospitality. Funny enough, this is some Zeus hospitality. I'm gonna knock on your door and you got to let me in. I'm telling you, the Wizard of Oz. I wouldn't doubt it if this is an Odyssey in itself. Um, I'm laughing, but they go to all these different places. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit different of an Odyssey. Frank Baum's versus Homer's. Okay, so they knock on the door and this lady opens and she's looking and she's like, She sees a girl, a tin man, a scarecrow, and a big ass fucking lion. And she's like, is he tame? Asked the woman, opening the door a little wider. Oh, yes, said the girl. And he is a great coward, too. He will be more afraid of you than you are of him. This sounds like an extremely violent person. I know I'm saying, I know that probably sounded like real like extra and dramatic, but no, this woman is now inviting someone into her home who is more terrified of her than he is, than she should be of him, so to speak. That's at least what Dorothy's saying. But when you think about it, somebody who is in your home and they are scared of you, that is a dangerous person to have in your doors, to have in your home. And this is the first people that these are the first people that they meet as they're headed into Emerald City. People who let in danger. I'm telling you. I was like, this is getting kind of odd because I'm paying more attention, less to what's going on in the plot and more to like the atmosphere of the society. I'm like, what's Emerald City like? Weird. Weird. We get to the point where the spectacles come out, right? And I showed you guys the spectacles that I have in the book. But because Dorothy asked, why do I have to put these on? Because if you did not wear spectacles, the brightness and glory of the Emerald City would blind you. Even those who live in the city must wear spectacles night and day. They are all locked on, for Oz so ordered it when the city was first built, and I have the only key that will unlock them. So, entry into the city is a pair of glasses that you got to put on that you can never take off. That's the first level of slavery, to give over your ability to see, your perspective. Their perspectives are forever altered by the color of Oz, green. So they gave over their own sight, their own ability to take in the world through their own eyes. They must take the world in through the eyes of Oz. I thought that was wildly unhinged, but great. Gave us an idea of the sinister city. Okay, let me hurry up because I want to get to the discussion portion. Let me see. We enter in the city of Oz. Oz talks to them all individually and shows himself to them individually. I'm so curious as to other people's thoughts on that and what each character saw, and why you think that they saw each one. That'd be fun. And then I want to mention here at the end, chapter 12. So, the search for the Wicked Witch. What I thought was most interesting in this chapter, because we end with Dorothy, putting water on her, right? What I thought was most interesting is that the Wicked Witch at first I thought was the woman of the woods. She's the Wicked Witch of, funny enough, too, the West. So I thought this might have been some rebellion. There's not a lot of animals in Oz. We know from Wicked that that another, I think it's George McGuire, maybe is the author, that his take on why the Wicked Witch of the West is as evil as she is because Oz is actually evil. Oz is going against animals. Oz is fighting, this, that, and the other. So we see one perspective on it, and I think that's interesting to take into account. But also, what I noticed is that she's the Wicked Witch of the West, which the West, at least situated for Frank Baum, is what's being colonized currently. And a lot of people are being scammed to go out there and to colonize, to start a new land. And when you think about it, she seems to be someone who has infringed upon the West because she's encaptured the people who live out there. What are they, the Winkies? I think they're the Winkies. I think that's what they're called. Yeah, I think they were the Winkies. So those are the people who live out there naturally. But, she is a witch who also has some type of power over nature, which tells us an awful lot about that. I think in some degrees. But what I took from it was that everyone in Oz was like, what did I put down in my commonplace journal? Um Oh, the wizard and the witch are at odds. What a nightmare of a world. That was my statement. The wizard, so of Oz, right? Oz, and the witch are at odds. And when you think about it, divine union, usually the feminine, the one of the wild, and the masculine, the one of domestic order, they come together and they build a society. So these are two aspects or two energies that come together to make the collision that creates life. So this is the two, plan and people that can actually carry out the plan come together, and then we manifest the idea, right? So these are two energies that normally should be intertwined, and they have been split. And I thought that that was the most interesting thing, because I wondered what Frank Baum was looking at in the world in 1900s America and somewhere in South Dakota, where he looked out upon the world and he said the witches and the wizards are at odds. I wonder who Oz is to Baum. And oftentimes these are usually concepts of people or like collectives, right? I wonder who the wicked witches are to Baum, because again, these are concepts, and then we've got one in the north, one in the south, one in the east, one in the west, and then Oz is somewhere, I suspect, in the middle. So what was he looking at? What archetype? And it doesn't always have to be consciously. And I say that just because, remember, when we were looking at Peter Pan, there's a big sense that Peter there's a really big sense that Peter isn't exactly um just like just Barry's imagination. Like this is an energy or a natural force that he's picking up on, and he's seeing move from woman to woman to woman, but he can't quite put his finger on it. It's just his imagination of experiencing it, his obsession with experiencing it, experiencing that energy going through him, not knowing quite what it is, and all of that. So I'm wondering if Baum is doing a similar thing. So that's what I'm going to leave us at, and then jump into discussion. I'm gonna pause for like a minute though and grab my salmon because I'm hungry, and give everybody a chance to get over to the Zoom. TikTok, thank you, love being here. But I'm gonna go over to the discussion. You guys can sit here and watch if you'd like, but it's just gonna be me staring a lot at the screen. And occasionally you'll hear me talk, but you probably won't be able to hear anybody else. So stick around if you want to. But everybody else, hop over to the Zoom so we can chat over there. And I will come back in 2 seconds to read all the comments. Okay. So I have um the lecture recorded now. Lecture. Okay. Everybody, give me like 2 seconds. I am just going to grab my food. Boop. Boop. Be right back. Okie dokie, I am back. Okay. Everybody, let me see. Oh my god, hi. I'm still at work, so I might not be able to make it to the Zoom, but I'm glad I could catch a few moments and break. Oh, I'm so glad, Wig. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the record button, and then we will jump into the discussion. And everybody, feel free. You can be on camera. You cannot be on camera. You can just use audio. You guys don't have to like No, you can jump in at any point in time. You know the general drill. Let me go ahead and get it started though. Okay. Is this recording? There we go. There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the discussion portion of our Wizard of Oz reading. I'm just going to go ahead and let everybody jump in. I kind of left off on some interesting aspects. If you want to catch the lecture portion, it is linked down below. So please do go ahead and watch that first, or, just jump on in and enjoy. All right, everybody. So I'm opening it up. I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to be too busy chewing. So anybody, just go ahead and jump in with anything that's been off the top of your head. You don't have to say anything related to what I talked about. If something I said sparked something in you, please do go ahead and jump in with that. But in general, I just want to know like everybody's experience reading, because I think The Wizard of Oz is something that most people were familiar with, whether you watched the movie, whether you've watched it in play, whether you've watched any kind of adaptation of it. How was your experience reading the original? If you've read it when you were younger versus now, how has that been? Just to kind of give you all a heads up, I've had in my mind quite some time over the past few days revisiting old haunts, revisiting old jaunts, so like old adventures and stories and lessons. So I'm curious if anybody's had any experience with revisiting this tale. All right, I'm muting myself. I agree with the experience sometimes of seeing history like while it's alive can be so unsettling, because there's so many different layers happening all at the same time, and it's like watching magic happen in real time, like all the threads coming together from different places that are completely unaware of each other too. I just wanted to pop in and say that. Ooh, do tell if you have any news, please, please, please. This will be a point of like research too. That's wild, because Barry technically had a similar setup with author Lewin Davies. Um, the Lewins, his entire family, his sister was one of this like, well, she was for the working class. I guess we would call her a suffrage. I don't think they did they call themselves suffragettes. Anyways, She was working in women's rights for working class women. I can't remember if they all called themselves the same thing across the globe, like across the transatlantic or not. Um, but through that, Arthur and his family were very serious in that way because they were also like abolitionists and stuff. Whereas Barry was not only a Calvinist, but it seemed like he wasn't Calvinist abolitionist as much as he had grown up around Calvinists and found them to be silly. And he wrote stories about them all the time. So, it was like, his people come from there and he finds it funny and silly, but like it's not his thing, so to speak. And Arthur and it could not stand Barry in that way, I think. So it's so interesting this dynamic because both I think Baum comes from maybe more affluent family or newer money, but Barry wasn't so bad off either. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm gonna mute myself as I chew. Ooh, Josh, can we hear more? Because you said the border between the real and the unreal is not fixed, but just marks the last place where the rival gangs of shamans fought each other to a standstill. And you said Robert Atten Wilson. I'm going to click on that link, but I was curious from your vantage point. That left me with, metaphorically, a lot to chew on. Mm, because especially what I keep circling around is who told that lion that he's big and terrible. Like I really see it with the story of like, the witches are good and stuff like that. But especially after I realized that that lion has put whatever this myth is on such a pedestal. And while he's done that, he's also, not part of Oz. He's never been to Emerald City. And yet, like, there is also an understanding of him in that context. I mean, like, a lot was clashing as they moved throughout the towns and the cities. And I don't know, it really brings me back to the Odyssey. I'm now that person who's going to quote it every 5 minutes. But it really brought me back to the Odyssey, where it's like there's the sea people, at least with Nolan's telling. Everyone keeps talking about these people from the sea. They come, they pillage, they're dangerous, and no one knows who they are or when they're coming. It's just everyone's heard stories about them having been somewhere, pardon me. And it's kind of like Dorothy and her gang are walking through, and it's almost like there's this echo of a danger, you know, like, oh, it's dangerous out there, the path is wrought, it's this, it's that, and yet we didn't really experience any danger. If anything, so far the lion's the dangerous one, in people's eyes, you know what I mean? By the time they get where they're going, you know what I mean? The only danger is a field of flowers that make people possibly pass out and then die because they just never wake up, and this lion. And so who has created, you know, like, what, where is the myth? And now I'm seeing it, you know, the shamans, it's the witches and the wizards, and they're fucking with everybody. And that makes you, that's why I keep coming back to who is Baum looking at in his own world? Because he sees it differently, you know, than he sees it differently, and so the only way that he can communicate it is through Oz, because that's how, through the veil, he's looking. You know, to everybody else, they see the unreal, but to him, he sees it and it's real. At least that's my take on it, I think. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that was wild because all he keeps doing is delegating. All right, all right. I've got this other problem. You got to go solve that, and then I'll solve your problem, whatever it is. You know, that makes me wonder about the spectacles. Oh, is anybody else saying anything? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, okay, okay. I really, after you just said bouncing back and forth, I'm like, I really wanted to know what you were saying. But yeah, okay, so the spectacles. That makes me wonder how much is the spectacle of the spectacle is the spectacles. It's in the word, isn't it? Because it's like, you know, we have phones, our phones are the spectacle. How often, you know, like, I've noticed this because I've like really cut down my TikTok time. And I noticed it with the Odyssey, to be funny. Funny enough, I like Nolan movies for the most part. I go and I experience them as film, you know, like, what was he trying to convey? Did he set out to achieve whatever he promised? And I'm looking at it that way, and I tend to enjoy them. Because he's always playing around with these interesting ideas, you know. Regardless, they're interesting to me, at least. I like seeing the way that he captures them on screen. It's very artistic. Like, what does he choose? How does he choose to show this thing that has either been shown 1,000 times, or that, you know, I always, I feel refreshed whenever I look at how he uses his paintbrush, so to speak. And so, listening to everyone's concept and idea about this film via the black box that is my phone, and the app that is TikTok, right? I ended up being like, man, this, you know, like, there's 1,000 opinions on this. The movie, you know, it dampened my excitement for the movie. I mean, that's in a healthy way as well, because, you know, I hate being too excited for anything. But it dampened my excitement, and then I watched it and I was like, wow, that was great. And my thing is like, for a moment though, I had put on the spectacles. I had put on the spectacles and I was seeing it through a certain lens, right? And then when I went to the film, I took them off. I was like, you know, I'm just going to watch this for me, see how I enjoy it. And taking off the spectacle, which is every TikTok opinion about what this is, and this and that, all the scholar opinions, all of the this and that, taking off all of that and just sitting down and experiencing theater, it was magnificent. And so it makes me think in terms of like, what are the spectacles that we wear today? And for me, I think one of them is, it's social media, for sure. That is a spectacle, and it does color the way that we see the world. Sometimes, you know, I get on my main account, so my work account, Midnight Scholar, I'll get on there, and, you know, if I have some stuff to say and this, that, and the other, soon as it goes to the For You page and I see someone's face, even if it's someone that I've seen before, I automatically just feel like, ugh. I don't want to. I don't want this worldview. I don't really align with everybody's, talking about kind of the same thing or in the same space or in the same energy, and I'm elsewhere, right? So it's almost like, I feel even more that I've like taken off spectacles the farther away I am from my social media, the time that I spend on social media. So, it's just like, what are the other man? Barry Frank Baum didn't have TikTok. What spectacles did he see everyone putting on? And that could just be the myth of America, right? What is Emerald City in this point? Some scholars have said, this is one economics guy. He uses Frank's Wizard of Oz to explain politics during the time where they were going from the gold standard, I think, or the silver standard to the greenbacks or something like that. They were changing over stuff, and obviously the financial crash happened some years later down the line due to the policies that were being pushed at the time. And one of the economic scholars uses the Wizard of Oz because it's a good like I was gonna say Trojan horse. God, the Odyssey's got me too much. Get out of my head. But it's a good vehicle for the economic story that the scholar was telling. But Frank Baum didn't set out to do that necessarily. But it does make me wonder, like, in his mind's eye, that's why I'm still a dog in a bone, where I'm like, who is his Emerald City? Is it the not the Rockefellers, but the Vanderbilts? Like, who is it? New York City itself? Like, who is his Emerald City? Because it could be Chicago, it could be other different places. It could be America as a total, because he's a part of a class that's not necessarily attached to locale. He's attached to something. He's attached to the market, so to speak. I don't know how to express that. Nationalism belongs to the proletariat. Is that the word that I'm thinking of? Yeah, and culture belongs to the bourgeoisie. It's like that. The bourgeoisie get to exist on a cultural line that connects all of them across the different state lines, whereas the proletariat are attached to state lines. So it would be like, I'm a Philadelphian, whereas the aristocrat in Philadelphia would say he's an American. Simply because he has more ability to move around. The more of the board is his versus the everyday laborer. So that's why I'm like, Frank Baum is definitely not an everyday laborer. His unseriousness, especially centering like the mother-in-law not liking him, is a really good sign that not only is he not part of the labor, he's so far from understanding and comprehending that world that it is offensive to people who work within it. And that's not necessarily means that he's a terrible person. It just tells us where his position is, and that speaks for itself. I really do wonder, who is his Emerald City? Okay, anybody else? Anybody else? You guys talk. That's also a Barry's note too, isn't it? Barry was like ostracized in childhood until he was like a teen, and then he found his like group of friends at like a certain academy. But until then, he was ostracized too. He didn't have a lot of friends. Neither did Carl Jung, come to think of it. It's like maybe that's a marker of those who end up in the imaginative field, like specifically the men of that time who end up in the space of imagination because they're ostracized from a game that all the other boys are playing. And then once you get ostracized, you're no longer in the game. You still have privileges that other people don't, like you don't have to do any domestic labor, right? That's why Frank was able to just go around failing at businesses. He wasn't expected to do domestic labor. So he's just kind of left to his own devices until he is required to participate in society in some way, shape, or form, which means like in a lot of these types of men end up in art, right, during this time, because they have a lot of time to kill and they're left to their own devices, and they have the privilege, especially when you think of the financial aspects in that position, they have the privilege to just kind of see the world for what it is. They're invisible, and yet also on command they can become visible, but they have a better, point of choosing how and when to do that. That's, I guess, that's where smarts comes in. They know that they can do what rooms they can do that in, and what rooms they have power over others, and in what rooms they don't. And then to some degree, that's even a blind spot, because then there are the women who are watching them, who are manipulating them from the background, because those men don't have any worldview outside of boyhood, essentially. God, it's so insane. It is so insane. Every time I think about um the people in these particular positions, you know what I mean? It's a constant, like self-affirming loop. Even when they try to get out of the loop, even when they're outcasted from the loop, there are other intersectional loops happening to throw them back in. It's like it's like colonialism, this thing that goes. It's it's a way of looping people into a hive mind so that they cannot formulate themselves in their own indigeneity. So, like, in themselves, right? They can't root. They have to stay in the machine. They're not allowed to root. Oh God, it's so wild. Frank Baum is connected to the theosophical, theosophical. I've never said that word out loud. Theosophical Society, and its esoteric and occult movement founded in 1875. Baum, along with his wife Maud and mother-in-law Matilda Jocelyn Gage, officially joined the Chicago branch of the society on September 4th, 1892. Ah, Josh, did you find it? Why are they all in the occult? I'm telling you. Oh. The Red Book. The Red Book. Carl Jung's Red Book. I just got it in the mail. Was reading the introduction, and apparently during this time period, so there's were we talking about this? Did I read this in the book? I think there was a time period where authors and artists were going back and forth in the occult specifically, and so this must have been it. This must have been like that, and they were creating, like, it's like the creation of fantasy into the written world and into the written sphere, like translating what is fantasy into a digestible language for others via the printing press, like you in writing, right? We can do oral stories and oral fairy tales, but how do you transport people into the imagination? Through writing, through storytelling. And this must have been like, a really deep dive into that, because before then everything was surreal, not quite fantasy. And I think this is man, it's so hard for me to tell. Oh, no. Tolkien was around this time. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I've been doing a lot of research into the history of fantasy in the West, and so the origin of it and stuff like that. And Tolkien is very much considered like a father in that space, because he was trying to rebuild mythology for, I'm not going to get into it, but he was really trying to rebuild the bones of it after World War I. And I think that all of this, the occultism, the making of fantasy, I think maybe Carl Jung, because I was asking myself, I was like, is the Red Book, did Carl Jung just not know that he could write fantasy? And I think that this might be it. Like we're watching the birth of fantasy as we speak, like as a genre, as a genre that people explore, that people are very well versed in at a young age, right? Like, it existed orally, but now we're kind of looking at people at the renaissance of it um in literature, and it's coming through in the children, well, like we call it the children's section, but I guess because they're the only ones who will entertain it. Everyone else is like, "Oh, what is that? I don't know. This is odd. Why here? Why not just take place in Cincinnati?" And you'll be surprised. There are people saying stuff like that in 2012. I had a teacher once. He asked me, "What's the point of writing fantasy if you could just, I don't know, set it in Chicago?" And I was like, "What's the point of setting it in Chicago if you can set it in, I don't know, Mars?" He was like, I just don't understand. And I was like, I can tell. Small brain, small brain. You shouldn't be teaching. I was like, what do you mean? It's an entire genre in libraries and in bookstores. So, and that was in that was like 2000 fucking 10 or something like that. I'm having a conversation with a full grown adult who was a professor in 2010. He didn't understand like where or how fantasy fit. And that's because it's fairly new. I think Tolkien published 30s, late 30s, no, maybe 39 or something. I'd have to look it up to see what the timeline on that. Tolkien published, and then we'll see the date pop up. Yeah, so he was not on to The Hobbit and stuff until like 37. Yeah. So he started in the late 30s, and that's the first real like foray into fantasy, like building other worlds and stuff. Um, man, anybody have any thoughts? It just dawned on me, which is so fucking hilarious that that would just dawn on me. Because I know that in other like a lot of my research that I'm doing right now is a lot of it's in fantasy and stuff like that and the history of it, and a lot of that starts in like the 30s in the West because we're talking about like as a literary genre in English literature. So I'm laughing at myself for that just now dawning on me. Because yeah. In the Red Book, that was my first thought. I said that to my husband. I picked up the book and I said, "Wouldn't this be funny if this was just a fantasy novel and Young didn't know that he was allowed to write fantasy? Like he just didn't know that he was allowed to just write fantasy because like I know that that sounds really silly, but even for like it is a mindset that one must have to train themselves into, and it's a mindset. You really should read Mutants and Mystics. Ooh, okay, Kaz. Mutants and Mystics. Let me Mutants and Mystics. I'm going to ooh. What? I'm looking at the cover and I'm like, ooh, I feel like I've seen it before and I know that I haven't. So therefore, this is going to be so much fun. Yes. Ooh. Sorry, everybody. I'm looking at this. Ooh, is this a textbook? Cat, is this a textbook? Am I going to learn many things? Ooh, yes. Yes. Oh, yes. I have found this. Yes, you have because I sent it to you when I was starting reading it. Oh, okay, that's why. That's why. Yeah. Okay, I was like, this looks so freaking familiar to me. Ooh. I'm so glad you mentioned it again. Okay, I'm gonna put that on my Kindle because it's a great gap. Fantasy and sci-fi, sci-fi, fantasy, and horror as literary genres were all being put into the same place because no one really knew how to categorize them. Like the gothic horror came out in like technically in like the like early 1700, I think, maybe when I can't remember what's his name, starts with the M. He did the first gothic horror. But a lot of gothic horrors and stuff were really just like women's lives with ghost because they couldn't tell the truth. You know what I mean? And so that's not really hitting people as fantasy because a lot of people were like, oh, hearing the horrors of somebody else's life is already like a ghost story for people in like the 1700s, the 1800s. Listening to like your neighbor's story about how she like, ran away from her husband and then fell into a bear trap and then how they had to take her leg. That's a horror story for people. They don't, that's not, but it's not a fantasy. It's not a fantasy at all. That was like domestic life for women. And women just either went one or two ways with it because things are very like religious at these times. It's either they treat their life like it's sacred and holy, like the patriarchy, and so the woman dives into the archetypes of being the virtuous one, the mother, it's the maiden, the mother, or the whore. There's those three archetypes that a woman could be and play upon in proximity to men. So when a man's around, she's playing one of those three figures. When that man's not around, she's probably wild to some degree, or she is keeping herself pure for those three figures that she can play. And so that's the difference between a woman who is devoutly into the patriarchy and then a woman who is biding her time trying to survive. Now, the woman biding her time trying to survive who plays those figures but then is wild on the inside, she's a ticking time bomb. That's why they had sanatoriums for women and called them schizophrenic, because they were ticking time bombs before that woman was going to snap and then probably cause harm to a lot of people around her, because she has all sorts of psychic information on people. She's eyes, ears, and she is everywhere and given power behind the scenes because she's the one who has to labor, right? So she's in charge of a lot, but also nobody knows what she's in charge of because they don't know what that entails because the men don't actually do those roles. So I'm telling you, it shakes out to a lot of ghost and horror stories for people, but nobody ever considers that fantasy. Now, once we moved into fairy tales, those were all like fantasy, but they were pastoral about this far off land where there's a king and a queen and knights and princesses and princes. And these are our pastoral stories, and they exist in the pastoral. So, what about the places that aren't pastoral? And remember, the Catholics, Christianity worked to make all that pastoral stuff as Christian as possible. So a lot of fairy tales were kind of like out of style for the most part until Tolkien comes back. Everybody's like ravaged Europe during World War One. He comes out with a pastoral that actually has darkness in it and all this stuff to help people digest and understand what the fuck just happened to them, because they are victims and they have PTSD from essentially, like in the Odyssey, like Odysseus leaves Ithaca, right? And then Ithaca falls to suitors who were essentially rapists and pillagers who were left at bay of raping the queen only. They're left at bay there because she's a prize and she can't be defiled. Otherwise, they don't get to be the king of anything and have the queen and have this if they defile it. But everything else is worth defiling. Everyone else is defiled. So you have to understand that, like, like, what does that look like? Like in 1920, 30s, in the 19 by 1937, what does the world look like when all of the soldiers come back and they are all like Odysseus's men, pigs, less human. Most of them need to die before they get here because otherwise they will ravage and raid everything. They're shells of themselves. They who their soul has been left on the battlefield, and now they are filled with the vengeance of their enemies because they are open, vacant, empty vessels, because they said that nothing is sacred, including the soul. And so their own soul became something that is quite transient, right? They die, but they do not get reborn because there is no mother. There is just what they have done. So they haunt the underworld, walking around like PTSD riddled zombies until their Orpheus comes and maybe they can escape. Maybe they can listen to the song and get out of this underworld. Meanwhile, they're just in a pub in London. You know what I mean? Ticking time bomb, waiting to go off. Girl walks by and now he feels like he's back at war, back in France somewhere where they could do some of the fucked up stuff. And there's enough guys in here that they've all experienced. And now the men are in conspiracy and a crime happens. Like, that was very real for people in, like, in Europe, because the war isn't just about what goes on outside of where you are, it's about what comes back. And so this was a time period where, like, people were getting things to help them digest that, because how do you explain your brother was a great person before he left and now he's not somebody that you even want to be left in a room with? That's really traumatizing for the people at home, not just the people who, are fucking questionable when left in a room with a pulse, with something with a pulse, and they go hunt, right? Oh, well, it's okay. It doesn't matter whether it's your sister. That's something that happens to people when they have done fucked up things to other people, or they witness it, or they feel themselves to be dehumanized, to be defiled, to be less than, because they were treated that way, because they were treated that way by the other men that were around. And this is just how they came back. And they don't really see what's wrong with it. It's just an urge. Everybody has one because that's what they've told themselves about their own rapings. Like, there's so much that goes into men coming home from war that it's really boys who have been broken who come back broken. and also angry and filled with, whatever rage and stuff. So at that point in time, how do you digest all of that? Tolkien gave everybody Sauron, something evil that is out there, the orcs, something evil that is out there. And then fantasy has been working ever since, right? The Arthurian legends resurfaced and came back. Fairy tales have resurfaced and come back. But every time, it's always something out there. This time, Baum though points at something in. It Baum's Oz is still technically, it's not in Kansas. It's out there somewhere, but it's out there and in us somehow. It's out there and everywhere all at the same time, you know? And I think what we're experiencing with Barry and Baum doing fairy tales, whereas Tolkien tried to do mythology. He tried to mythologize everything to make sense of it. And these fairy tales do something. I haven't finished Tolkien, so I can't make that. I can't say that, he fails to do something. So far, what I'm noticing is that these fairy tales, what they achieve is the ability to bring a little bit of what keeps being put out there as something that is everywhere. Everywhere. These characters, Oz, the wizard, these are things that are everywhere, not some other coming to get you, but you have been transported into Oz. Things like that. Dorothy was transported into Oz. Anybody can drop into Oz, that sort of a thing. Frankenstein came out in 1818. Yeah, but see, the issue with Frankenstein is while that was definitely, it was a horror, but it wasn't considered a fantasy, because during that time they really thought they could animate. They really were trying to animate people and figure out how they were with electricity and shit like that. And I think that's why Frankenstein lasted so long, is because it was the first one that probably blurred reality and fantasy to some degree. I think also because it fit more religious tones too. We get to the monster and then we find out that the monster is a child that has not been raised properly, so it has this religious thematic tone to it, that feels more spiritual than fantastical, most likely. And not that that's on purpose or that it's purposely trying to be religious. I'm just saying that people probably related to it in a religious tone, because of the parent that has neglected the child, that sort of a thing, rather than experience the fantasy of it, the slide, I don't know. I wonder how people received it, to be totally honest. That would just be my guess as to like, but yeah, but it fits into it fits, that's one that is always thrown into the horror genre, which is always considered fantasy. It's one of our early ones. Dracula too. What else? Nostafaru was, I think, came after Dracula, didn't it? It is Dracula, but different take. Tolkien was Catholic. Makes sense. He'd build worlds with that much mythology. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all the same thing though, right? Like it's trying to rebuild trying to rebuild the spiritual plane. I talk about it sometimes. I'm reading a book called Relative Native. The Relative Native. I'll leave a link down below. The Relative Native. Oh, Oh, okay. Well, I found the book. It's also a collection of essays. I'm just going to say that this was the first link that I found on Google, and it seems like it's the whole thing. As a PDF, I don't know. I don't know. It's just the link that I found, monoshowshop.org. Um, so it's an organization. I don't know. Maybe it's translated or something. But you can get this. But it's an anthropologist out of, I think, Brazil, and he discusses the fact that anthropology in imperial and colonial spaces, so most of the West and most European, any Western type of anthropology, institutional, right, has always looked at the native and always thought that it could study and understand and know the native by sheer observation. And this one says, no, you can't. You can only be in dialogue with another anthropologist about their position, and that you too can be in dialogue about your positions, and sometimes from that comes some type of understanding, but it's never one person can observe the other, because that would assume universal knowledge that the other doesn't have. And the fact that the other exists means we don't have universal knowledge. We can't have universal knowledge because the other is unknown to us. And so it talks about that, but I think it's also going to dive into Annieism. That's the reason why I got it, actually. It was to do a little bit more, to read about Annieism, how it was understood today. And so it's delightful so far. I mean, it's dense, but it's delightful. Um, but a part of it is an aspect of realizing that other people have different conceptual worlds. So like we all have different D&D planes that we exist on. The pastoral fairy tale was a D&D board that people used to spiritually be able to talk to each other with and to navigate. Again, I'm going to mention it. The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, I think is a great, oh god, it's there's so many gems from it. But one aspect that the characters talk about is, Zeus's law. And one of the soldiers says, well, not everybody knows Zeus. So how do we know that these people are going to know Zeus's law? And then Odysseus says, everyone knows Zeus's law. And the issue with this, right, is like, no, everyone doesn't. You don't know where you are. You could literally be on an island in the South Pacific somewhere, and these people don't know Zeus. So you going ahead and just eating what you want because, oh, Zeus, Zeus, Zeus. That's ridiculous, right? And this is this is Odysseus' first thought. And so, but that begs into question, though, is like Zeus's law is an agreement amongst people who are in conspiracy of how to navigate and understand the forces of the world. The forces of the world say that if you were lost at sea and you show up on someone else's doorstep, then greet them with kind hospitality, treat them as you would wish to be treated in the moment. And knowing that, do unto others as you wish to be done unto you. Because if you don't, here's a plethora of evidence of bad shit that will happen to you if you don't do that. The Odyssey is one of those. One of those pieces of plethora of evidence of what happens when you treat other people poorly and you don't want that to happen. It will happen to you, in other words. But that's the Zeus is a D&D board where a bunch of people are going collectively to sort out the nature of being human and relating to each other on a plane, right? We have a conceptual plane and then we have a reality plane. And our conceptual planes, the way in which we build to navigate our reality and how we relate to each other, especially when we're not in each other's presence, right? How can I trust that you will do this even if you're not there all the time? The way that we do that is on our conceptual plane, and our conceptual planes, as different cultures, are totally different, like totally fucking different. Not we all have these issues and we need to know how to go about them. And there are universal laws. How do we know those universal laws? No, the universal laws build different planes. That's it. Some planes, if you are a stranger, you will die. There is no stranger who comes here. Simply because maybe these people live in caves. I don't fucking know. You get what I mean? Like some people don't do the whole, oh, somebody washes up on shore. They don't live next to an ocean. They don't have that issue and they do not navigate that way. In fact, everyone around them comes from one of the four clans in every direction. So if you were a stranger, you had to get through one of those clans first to get to me. It's the Emerald City, right? Everyone in Emerald City is suspicious. Where'd you come from? Huh? Where'd you come from? You don't look like a munchkin, but you came from Munchkin Lane. What'd you do over in Munchkin Land? Did you eat them? Did you kill them? Where'd you come from? You don't look familiar to me. It's way more different than the Munchkins who are used to seeing strangers pop up or fly in, I guess. I don't fucking know. Like these are different conceptual, like even the culture in Emerald City is different than it is in Munchkin Land. These are different conceptual planes. They don't exist on the same board. They don't have the same problems, so they definitely don't build the same type of societal structure. They don't interact with the same gods. I think that was also really well done. Let me stop talking about the Odyssey. We're talking about Wizard of Oz, which feels like the Odyssey. Jeez. Anyways, anybody else want to say anything? I went on and talked. Ooh. First of all, I was thrown because I forgot that Dorothy did pull up on him like that. That's how you know you're dumb. I'm sorry. That was a moment for me. That's how we know you're dumb. You don't know what home is, do you, bro? You don't know what emotional connections are, do you, bro? But that's such a good point because you know what else came up as you were saying that is Toto didn't care whether they were in Kansas or in Oz. This happens a little bit later. You'll see it when you get to it. That Toto doesn't care whether he's in Kansas or Oz because to him, wherever Dorothy goes is his home. And it was like, Dorothy, does Dorothy even really know what home is? Because she wasn't able to identify. She just knows that like this is just the place that I'm at where my routine is. Toto knows who's home and it's Dorothy, but Dorothy didn't really mention her aunt and uncle, did she? Oh no, you're good. You're good. Okay, is because I was gonna say, damn, Dorothy. If I remember correctly, I don't think she really mentioned her aunt and uncle at the beginning, but then it makes sense if she does at the end, because like the point is home is where your heart is, and heart is where the people, the emotional connections that you have, right, with people. That's so interesting. Mm, that's the first time she mentions that lady. I don't mean to. I'm laughing because to me, Dorothy seems like she's just like bowed it. You know what I mean? Like anything that just happens, happens, and she's just pretty like accepting. So I'm trying to fight through that image that I have of her. That's why I keep laughing at like her being like Aunt M because last time she was gray. Like the narrator's like Dorothy scared the shit out of her half the time. She'd just start laughing and on him would be like my nerves, my nerves. So I don't know why I'm laughing at this. Like Dorothy's allowed to have feelings. I don't know why I see her that way. It's just being like, well, I'm back. She just seemed, in the depiction, it was just so detached. Maybe that's Frank Baum, and I'm just laughing at him not knowing how a little girl would like how a little girl is mm, formed in this time period into a woman. Like she's pressured to be motherly all the time and have that emotional connection and express it out loud and stuff like that. Like those are some of the like tenets I think of growing up female in a society like this. And so maybe it's not there, and maybe that's a me thing where I'm like, Frank, Dorothy seems a little detached. Like she doesn't really give a fuck about these farmers or this place. This is a good question, but yeah, no. Oh, Meg, what was the question that you left us with? Yeah, what is her sense of home, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder what Matilda, his mother-in-law, thought about Dorothy and her connection. You get what I'm saying? Because is this bomb being like a little out of touch? Like he just described what the world is and how little Dorothy is protected in it. I mean, it's not like Aunt Am grabbed her and threw her down there. You know what I mean? She didn't jump up there like, girl, if you don't get your ass out here, fuck the dog, just get in the hole, Dorothy. She didn't do any of that. She was just in the hole. And then, like, come on, Dorothy. I just know, like, personally, I'm the last one to get in of me and children in general, let alone me and my children. You know what I mean? So it kind of spoke to me in that sense where I'm like, okay, Frank Baum captured that this woman is not motherly. Dorothy isn't motherly. And not that they need to be at all. This is just a sign that this is void. She doesn't have a mother. She is an orphan. She doesn't see her aunt and uncle necessarily as surrogate parents as much as like you're right. They're kind of like they like exist there. Like this is what she has. So therefore that is what she has. Rather than like these are my people. Cuz I'm curious. I'm curious at what his mother-in-law would think of Dorothy because I could see this moment of being like, like if he handed me this, I'd be like, why the fuck does she want to go back? And if he was like, well, that's because home is where the heart is. I'm like, and where the fuck is the heart, Frank? These people, what did you see about this? And you were like, oh, it's so quaint. And he'd be like, oh, you don't understand people. Sometimes the simple thing, Frank, you're not simple. You have money. We live in a shop. Like my daughter wears gold. Frank, she's not a fucking farmer. You've never been on a farm. You've never even been to fucking Kansas. Yes, I have. Okay, you went to that one farm in Kansas. That one farm. And I'm sorry, who invited you? Was it the rich guy in town or was it the poor people? I thought so, Frank. It seems like you're romanticizing this. And then she'd go into some tirade about about women and like and the role and how he's not seeing things and he'd be like, "Oh, so silly." And just like, I don't know, Twitter off into like his study to go think more about Oz and less about like what's actually going on in Kansas, so to speak. Like, when someone is loves a thing that, oh, it's giving the father who loves his family, but he doesn't remember even really what his children's names are or what they do. They're just pretty little things, right? And when he comes out of his study, the pretty little things run up to him and go, Father, Father. And he goes, I'm the best. They love me. They always come up to me. But like, he doesn't really know one from the other. They're like dogs, like, mm-hmm. I'm wondering if it's like a little bit of that, right? Like to him the children, all of that, it's the people who live, the blue collar workers, the people who were laborers, the people who's the salt of the earth farmers, right? They're kind of like puppies in this particular instance. Like he's he loves them because he lives in the general area and he participates in this life. So he loves them as a backdrop, but does he know them? Is he really in that struggle? Ooh, go on. Mm. Ooh, I haven't gotten to the Winkies. Do we meet the Winkies after chapter 12? Oh, yep, yep, yep. Chapter 13. I just opened it up and I already see Winkies. Yeah, we get to know more of them. Ooh, go on, go on. Ooh. Ooh, I'm gonna write that down as a note. This is to me that's like creepy. Pay attention to the Winkies. He really does have like the amount of enslaved people in this book is also jumps out at me. The monkeys that were enslaved, the flying monkeys, and then they weren't anymore because they had fulfilled a debt. The mouse queen enslaving her people immediately. It's like everyone is very much slavery is very much alive during this time period because it's so normalized as like something that a role that people play. You know, it is a role that people play, and it's a role that people play. It seems like based on just like nature. The mouse is like, I'm indebted to you, so obviously I'm your slave, and the people within my power are at your disposal. You know, like that is a very interesting way of thinking about people, about like how you exchange gifts. Like you gave me the gift of life, so I'm going to exchange people. Like, you know, the bodies that exist here. Because that's in Oz. I think that's interesting too. He put slavery in Oz. In fact, his Oz isn't really a wonderland as much as it's a well, no, it is. It's a place to wonder about things. I'll say that, but it's not a utopic place at all. And not that it was supposed to be or anything. It's just a thought that I'm having. The Winkies. Ooh. Anybody else got anything that jumped out that you want to talk about? Even if it's just a thought, you know, it doesn't even have to be like a deep thing. Do you mean like Baum is the Wicked Witch of the West? Baum is Oz. Baum is Dorothy. Baum, like he situates himself in each of these characters, but then like everything else is legitimately just a pawn on the board for t- to move. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm definitely on the same spot. I think it's always telling which characters get stage time, right, and get perspective or story or their like any part of their story or perspective told versus those who don't. I think that's very telling of the psyche of the author, is like damning and terrifying as that is to say, right? Like what we don't pay attention to or how we use others, even in fiction, is telling of how we see power and how we believe power is wielded and what is justifiable wielding of power, and what isn't, you know? Because like yeah, the way that the I was just thinking about the Wicked Witch and all the animals that she sent, and then they just like killed them all. I was like, all the bees. I was like, not right, not the bees. We don't have that kind of. I was going to be like, we are not in the place where you can just be murdering bees. You know, climate. And then the crows. Didn't all the crows get all their necks snapped by the scarecrow? I was like, this is merciless. Also, the animals to me kind of felt you know, I'm going to say this by way of Peter Pan. It did feel like the animals were a stand-in for people who are fighting a cause. And it could be that the wolves, the crows, the bees, these are all different types of in so in one way, shape, or form, these could be different types of native groups. You know, like I think about the literal crows. I think, who is that? The crow. They're from an overall. Not the Sooks. No. Anyways, I'm just thinking about the general idea of kinship with animals and taking on that name. And the Wicked Witch having been out here possibly as a, like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of a deal, but also I am going to colonize you in the same way that my enemy would. But you know that I'm a good one because I'm fighting against them. We're fighting against them together. Oh, bye, Megan. Have a good night. You know, like we're fighting against them. Ooh, I once went to Voyage looking for pyramids, domes, stargates in the USA. Ooh, this one's in Kansas. Is that Oz? Stop. Roads A, and Z. Stop. Let me. The geographic center of the United States. Wait, that's the center? That's insane. Like the continental, as in North America, or of wow, wow, that's really bizarre. That's so insane. So, do we think that's why he said it in Kansas? Do we think Frank Baum knew this? You know I love stuff. I love that. Oh my god. Wow, yeah. City population was 178, which is 40 fewer than 2010. So as of 2020 now, they've doubled their population, but it is still fewer than what it was. Oh my God. That's crazy. I think so because like okay, what did I see that made me go? Oh, it's located near Bella Fourche. How many French people went through here? Um, it's right near South Dakota where Baum was. So I'm pretty sure he had to have gone through there. He like like this seems like one of those things that the town's going to note itself on, especially as it's trying to pull in people during that whole scheme where they had people going west and farming and stuff like that. And didn't Kansas City, Kansas is or is it Missouri, Kansas? One of the Kansases. Uh, get out of here. Yeah. Didn't Roadhouse take part in Kansas? Okay. That's my Midwest knowledge is almost null. And so all of this is magical to me. I'm like, oh my God, this is so fucking bizarre. Actually, yeah, no, okay, Emerald City portaling off this girl there. What the? Now I'm feeling a little weird because there's something going on here at the level that Baum. You know how I keep saying, what did Baum see as Emerald City and why was he so aware of this? What was he looking at? Because the fact that he's part of an occult society, and this is obviously something that's going on around with the bourgeois at the time because it was also going on in Europe at the time, and we know that that's probably transcontinental in some way, even if it's slow, you know what I mean. They're probably talking across the ways about something and seeing something very like it just seems like they're having a very real experience that's not being fully translated, but we're seeing all sorts of evidence of it, you know? And I wonder what it was. Hmm. I feel like this is when we find out. I feel like this is when we find out like all the ghost stories about all of the people ghost hunting in these places. And I'm just, me. What's going on there? All of the entire spiritual hauntings that happen, that we're just blind to half of the time. Man, I just wish I knew. I wish I knew what strange things they were just explaining to themselves back then. I think of things like the Dust Bowl too. That's another one that's like, this is to me when I see the things like the Dust Bowl, I see certain things writing themselves, and like the wind is, I see forces at bay doing things and people being caught up in it. And there had to have been even more things that people saw that was left to just memory. Man. Anyways, anybody else have anything that they want to throw in? I'm no longer talking because it's 7:08, and I want everybody else to be able to throw out what they want to say before we go. Ooh, do you want to recount it? Because I was listening to it, and this was right before we I remember listening to it and being like, "Dang, this man! I never knew that he there was a whole relationship aspect to it, wasn't there?" I started getting drowsy. Yeah, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh my god. I watched this Spanish drama that was like that. And now that I think about it, the boy, his name's Pedro. It was agua para chocolate or something, for water for chocolate. But this girl's mother, she, like, her husband did a horrific act to her, and obviously she ended up having a daughter. And this was after he had, like, she was gonna run away with this man that she loved, and he killed that man. And so obviously, she was stuck, and she became like a pillar of salt. She was just bitter, and she treated her daughter like a slave. And she was like, no, this one guy from a different ranch, he was going to inherit the ranch too. These are all like Spanish colonizers in Mexico. And the mother was like, no, you can't marry her, but you can marry my first daughter. And so he's like, well, in order to stay with the girl that he loves, he should just marry her sister. And then she's traumatized by this because not only did she think she was getting out of her mother's house because her mother treated her very poorly, and her other two sisters, like her middle sister, her mother loved the most because it was from her affair. And the oldest, she that was her pride and joy as far as like, that's going to be the girl that takes after her. And then obviously the youngest daughter, she didn't like at all. She just treated her like a slave. And so this girl thinks she's getting out of the house, and she's in love with this man too, like they were childhood lovers. And then she finds out he's marrying her sister. She has to make the cake for it, all this terrible stuff. And it's kind of like throughout the entire show you see him being chipped away because he is in every means of imagination making the wrong step. You know what I mean? Like, and it chips away at like what could be between them and stuff. So he becomes kind of like a tin man. And I think that this is like, that's part of that must be a very common, I want to say, experience for men, is falling in love with a woman and then having the maliciousness of another or an older woman, in some way, shape, or form, destroy it. And they destroy the boy, the man. They destroy him, tear him down, until he's only stuck in boyhood, or fear, or paralyzed by the fear of his own emotions. Like he can't love because then someone will just come and yank him from it again, and it's like, it's traumatizing because they are like raw in love. This is like that And this is the kind of love that comes from, it's a carnal and a social relationship. They are animalistically in love with each other, meaning biologically they are definitely smitten. And they are also um playing roles in society that makes this love bloom in some way, shape, or form, like their neighbors, things like that. They know each other really well. And so that's a really raw thing to pull, the image in my mind is a really horrific thing that I don't really want to repeat. But it's like a cruel way of grabbing onto something that is soft and fleshy and then yanking nails across it, like that is so traumatizing that it makes one retract completely and never want to come out ever again. And that's like only a mother could do such a thing, and she doesn't even have to be your mother. It's that sort of a witchy kind of vibe to it. So like that's crazy to me now that I remember what, because I remember thinking that story was crazy, but I couldn't remember the details. And now that you mention that, yeah, that's some real fucked up shit. I've seen it in an actual show where I watched that slowly play out, and he was definitely chopped at until like terrible things happened to him. He lost his first child. He was trying to do the right thing and like help rebel and help the peasant class like overthrow these enslavers and stuff. And he's just every time he does, it's like no good deed goes unpunished. He does, every step in the right direction is like still costing him because of his misstep with his true love. He's unable to feel, he's unable to tap in emotionally, so his intuition's off the entire time. And that's just, yeah, that's wildly unhinged. Anyways, I wanted to say that because when you said, "Is that Dorothy?" I'm curious as to, oh man, oh, that's right. We haven't finished it. I was gonna say, I'm wondering what Dorothy plays a part in his coming home, but I forgot we haven't finished the book. I'll put that thought down, but I'm gonna jot that down. Anything else, y'all? And Josh, did you have more thoughts on that? Because that was really, I'm writing that one down as something to hold on to. Ooh, do you think that's speaking out on the American landscape? The East is bad, the West is bad because they're all capitalist, East and West, but North and South, they're like, technically he's in North Dakota, South Dakota, like Midwest, North, Midwest, South. These seem like the salt of the earth people, because they're all farming and agriculture. I'm just wondering, like, is that even a statement on like something like that? Like he's picking sides. Huh. That's right. Ah, yeah, right. Going from east to west. And look how it's disrupting everything. How it's causing, like people's quaint little town. Like it just, oh man, change from east to west. It always comes in from the east and it goes into the west. The west pulls and sucks. I'm thinking about the whole dust storm and stuff. The wind used to come from the west and blow from from the Rockies and stuff like that. It used to come out all the way up into like Kansas, and then it would go to, I think it went all the way up to like the Dakotas and stuff like that to some degree, where it was like coming from the west, like this wicked wind from the west. But that wouldn't be for like another 20, 20, 30 years or something like that. um so you know what I mean? Like, was he picking up on those vibes? What was that wind like? Like, if this is 20 years before the wind, before nature starts getting upset, what was going on 20 years before nature got upset? You know? Oh man. Oh, the clearing and the buffaloes. When was the buffalo? When were the buffaloes being murdered? Oh, that's 1870. Yeah, they plummeted from tens of millions to just a few hundred by the mid 1880s. So this is still before that. So after murdering all the buffaloes, then we have like the sheer amount of indigenous people who then are like starving, right, and being marched off land. So that's happening in the West at the time that he's, kind of ideating on all of this. He would have grown up listening to all of this or hearing about it to some degree, right? Ooh. And then what was that carrying? Before we get the kind that carries people, usually it carries stuff, infrastructure. And then eventually it starts carrying people, and then that's when we get like a build out where people start traveling more. Man, it just makes me think that the world must have been so fucking different then. Like just the situation, like just being and existing in the beginning of like infrastructure at that time, the stories they must have been telling themselves to get everyone to do it. Oh, that's where I'm gonna hit you guys with this too. Again, it's the Odyssey. There's a point in the Odyssey. Like, okay, Odysseus has to like answer for all of the soldiers that he's like led into battle and they did not make it home, or all the people who are on their way home after having been after realizing that they are the bad thing or just being the bad thing, right? They're filled with all this animosity if they're not dead. So the question here is like, what about the ones who died? Who, if they had known the truth about the more information, right? That Odysseus technically he knew had influence of, right? If all those people had known what he knew, would they have done the same thing? And the answer is oftentimes right, like no. People follow a message into battle. They don't necessarily know the man that they're following, and this makes me wonder about all the people who are following a message right now. And in the early 1900s, late 1800s, they're all following a message, and they're not going to get the the truth of what that message is or see that message manifested. They're just manifest destinying. They're still trying to do the destiny part. Or at least again, right, into the new frontier again, manifest destiny again. They've been promised something, and all of those promises, I mean, I'm sure we can scrounge them up and find them in history and stuff, but a large portion of them will have just went to the wayside, buried under guilt, shame, regret, um PTSD. you know I think about in the Dust Bowl when all of the people from Oklahoma went to California. A lot of them would have flyers like, there's work out there, there's work out there. They kept hearing that, to the point where they start going and they realize that people are like, hey, we sent out like 5,000 flyers thinking we might get like 100 people. Not that all of you would show up. We don't have that. You got to go somewhere else. And then don't stay in our towns either, because now you're, vagrants. You're not part of our city. You're not part of our place. I only meant for like a few field hands, not all of you. Like we followed this message. This was our hope. This was the light at the end of the tunnel. And then we got to hell. Like that light was a flame. What the fuck? Like it makes me think in terms of that. Oh, and by the way, I give up. You're welcome. That's me, Books for Plebs over here. Yeah, the Midnight Scholar Society, that's definitely, it's for adults only. I don't do content for children. Although The Wizard of Oz, I think, would be a great book to bring into for book club and stuff like that with children, simply because there's a lot to be talked about there. And one thing that children definitely need is a plane where of they need that fairy tale plane, because then you can discuss real world issues in Oz. You can talk about Oz when it comes up. I do that with my children all the time, especially my oldest. As we venture out and we talk about complex situations, I pull from media all the time to say, how would so and so deal with this in this world, in this particular place. So The Wizard of Oz, definitely you should bring it in to the kids. It is still a good one. I want to say. But yeah, man, y'all, I'm putting down the Tin Man story. Emerald City. Emerald City. And then I'm going to put Kansas because before I meet you guys again, Kansas. I want to kind of look into some of it. I want to like mule over these things. I've got the shamans written down, the war of the shamans, who are the shamans at play right now. Um, I feel like I might be able to answer at least one of these questions. I want to look into Matilda Gage, his mother-in-law. I had a dream earlier that makes me wonder and think that, there's something to the mother-in-law here. Um, and the Tin Man story. Like, how did this old woman get this witch to enchant something to harm somebody? Witches for hire. And she's from the East. Yeah, because what, in Oz, everything is a price. You got to pay a price for everything you get. Yeah. Dang, I wonder. And I've never read this book before either, so maybe I want answers to that in the back. Like, don't start with me. Maybe he covers some of that. Apparently, The Wizard of Oz was not his best work in some people's opinion. He has so many other novels that take place on Oz that take us through different ventures and stuff. And apparently, it's like a lot of people say that, of those who have read it, that the other ones tend to be their favorite. And Oz just so happens, or the Dorothy's navigation of Oz so happens to be a good gateway in, but is by no means the most interesting part. So I don't know. I might check out some more just for fun to see what he did because, yeah, what did she have to pay? Oh, man. All right. Anybody else have anything else to say? Ooh, we've got the American Society. Let me see. I see you drop something, Christina. Let me copy a link. Okay. Ooh, The Wizard of Oz economic fairy tale. Thank you. Thank you. Who was it? I'm scanning to see if we get the name of Henry Littlefield. Henry Littlefield. He was a high school teacher. Yeah. Um, Teaching economics. So yeah. Yeah, he went about the pursuit of pasting it on. I'm going to read through this too. Because in my mind, what if Henry's just telling us what Frank Baum saw as an obvious, like when you're a part of something, and that's the thing that I keep trying to pin down on him is like, where did he see himself in society? Where was he comfortable? Because when you're a part of something, it's obvious to you and you don't want to talk about the obvious, which is why he went into Oz, because talking about the obvious is like regurgitating your own throw up. It's like, ugh, it's unappealing. But saying what you want to say that you otherwise feel like you can't say, that's cathartic. And oftentimes we retreat into our interior worlds and our imagination comes alive because of how much we've been holding back. So I wonder, is it just that his world, his mundane world, really, like maybe his home life really is like Dorothy's Kansas, like to us, perhaps him living in a gilded age doesn't look so mundane, but for him, it could have been just as dry as sand. And then, especially when you look out on his landscape, there's laborers, there's land, and it's the unknown for as far as you can see. And you're just one person living in it all. Privileged as he may have been, he was still a very small man, staring out into a great big unknown, and then just trying to make sense of it. Huh. Insane. Okay, so you guys couldn't hear the music playing in my ears, but it really did. The orchestra kind of picked up just a little bit, and I felt like I was on the prairie. It was a moment. Ooh, and the gold standard effectively ended in 1971 when U.S. President Richard M. Nixon severed the connection between a country's currency and real commodities, such as precious metals. And that would have been that would have been the bread and butter of his family, wouldn't it have been? During the Gilded Age, precious metals, they were all going out building company towns to collect those things and to like fortify their fortune in it. That's the old money, right? Is in is in the resource, the raw resource. And then as you refine it, that becomes more valuable until eventually the raw resource becomes it's invaluable because you need it, and then it becomes not valuable at all because people only care about what the image of the commodity means for them. Like watching a drama called it's the Chinese drama called The Pearl Girl, and the story of the Pearl Girl. And the pearls are really precious material. Pearl divers risk their lives to go down and get them. They're like slaves as well. This is a period piece. It's terrible. Everything's terrible. But this pearl costs like lives. And then all of a sudden in a city with merchants, the pearl, it cost a number. And it's not even, the number will go up if you turn that pearl into a hairpin. Turn that pearl into a hairpin and the number goes up. But originally it cost lives. Like legitimately the slaves are like they're swimming against the current, sharks, and each other because some of them are murderous. So it costs lives, but now all of a sudden it's worthless unless it's on a hairpin to a merchant somewhere who's never even seen the fucking ocean that this thing came out of. Like it really is some crazy shit like that. Makes me think old money. He went and, he must have been seeing him his whole life go into oblivion. Maybe that's why he checked out and decided to write a book instead. Oh, that was sad. Okay. Anybody else got anything else to say before we wrap it up? And we'll be back August 25th with this all finished. And then maybe we'll have something else to say about Bomb. I was going to move us over to the UK afterwards to Ursula Le Guin's Tales of Earthsea because now we've got wizards, and the wizards are doing shit. Ursula's like, hey, fuck the children's stories. We're talking about initiation. We're going out. We're fighting. I don't know. There's a really like hype song in my head. I don't think Ursula Le Guin was like that hyped. But the point is that we're moving on from fairy tales to like wizards, you know what I mean? And that should be interesting, especially with Ursula Le Guin. She was pretty tapped into. One, we're moving from men in society writing these things to a woman who also has quite a connection to Eastern philosophy. So that should be really interesting too. I'm so glad you guys had so much fun. I did too. I didn't think that I would really enjoy The Wizard of Oz. I've never been attracted to it whatsoever. And like going through this, I was like, that's crazy. I was so excited to come sit and talk. Like, y'all. I was like, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Frank Baum's up to something. And we all know I love a little bit of curiosity. Okay. I think that's it. Oh man. Also, I just want to say one more time, guys. Get the the illustrated version. I don't know. The quality's so great. The shit's so fucking cool. Okay? I gotta show you guys this before I go. This is like Dorothy up here, and you can make her fucking little feet click together and shit, like boom. So fucking crazy. I love book art. Absolutely. Okay, I just want to say that. I'm gonna let you all go now. I had so much fun. These will be up soon. I'm gonna just to give you guys a preview. I'm gonna be doing a newsletter like maybe about 2 times a month, maybe once a month. But there's gonna be a lot of stuff that's just kind of pouring into some of the buckets. I've got different collections like the astrology, research, and deep dives into things. What other buckets do we have? We've got some fiction. You guys know I do lectures in some spaces, and sometimes I'm posting like essays and stuff like that. So there's gonna be a lot more content that's like flowing in. And you guys can have fun with that. And then the newsletter will kind of wrap you up. I'll give you a little bit of bios about what is and where to find what. So that way, instead of doing like an update in a newsletter, I'll be able to focus a little bit more on the astrology updates and go a little bit deeper, maybe even pull open the Zoom. I'll probably, if I'm doing stuff like that, if I'm on camera, you guys know I tend to just do it live when I'm live. And then when it's published. It's just on the Patreon, right? So you can always pop in. Sometimes it'll just be, I might end up scheduling my time to do those things, because if I don't, I'll just wait until, and then I'll be like, I want to do this at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, yeah, I'll probably end up scheduling it. Actually, I probably won't. You guys, we have class. Maybe that's schedule enough. Maybe I need the spontaneity. So if you just catch me live, you'll catch me live. But yeah, if you see that, don't be alarmed. You didn't miss class. I didn't change anything. I'm just filming content live, rather than, what's the word? Not live. Rather than just filming it and then posting it. I'm just doing it live because, I get bored sitting here just talking to a fucking camera by myself. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty lame. I like talking to you guys, at least. And then you guys ask questions and stuff like that. And we have a good chit chat. Sometimes it takes us into weird places and I fucking love it. You know what I mean? But anyways, I'm going to do some more research on Frank Baum and take some of the stuff that we talked about and chew on it. I'm excited. I'm excited for the end of this. I've never been excited for the Wizard of Oz in my life. It's cracking me up. Okay, that's it for me. Anybody else want to say anything before we hop off? Or is everybody good? Perfect. I've been reading her Hainish series. Ooh, I'm going to look that up, Kaz. Hainish. Ooh, the Hangish cycle, huh? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Is this the one with dispossessed in it, maybe? The Left Hand of Darkness, The Dispossessed. Yes, yes. I wanted to read that. I have that on my list as well. I have some nonfiction of her on my desk to read. I think. Um, man, God, so many books, so many books. You're gonna have to tell us what you think about Ursula Le Guin and like what other stuff, especially as we go over Earthsea. Oh man, I bet you're like the parallels. You know what I mean? And I want to hear all your thoughts on like the Dispossessed, especially. Man, Left Hand of Darkness. Okay, maybe. Oh man, both of them. Anyways, yeah, bring it to book club. You can tell I'm already geeking. All right, everybody. I guess that's it then. I'll see you all Thursday, right? Yeah, Thursday. Art Club is disbanded for now until we get a new project, and it might be something from the Wizard of Oz. I like to let like that come up rather than try to force and make something, because then we'll get burnt out, or at least I will. So I wait. The map thing hit me, and I thought that was so much fun. Maybe something will pop up for the Wizard of Oz, for us to do. I just, I like it to be intuitive rather than, like I said, strictly scheduled. So I'll see. And if anybody has any ideas, always drop by in DM. I love when you guys drop like stuff to read or books and stuff, because I capture all of that and try to work it in and see what's going on and stuff. I'm just really slow to respond. If you ever send me something and I haven't responded, I'm just slow. But things are picking up. Things are picking up, so I'll get better at it. But anyways, I will see you guys. Zines. Ooh. I don't know what that means, Kaz, but I like zines, so I'm excited by that. But anyways, y'all, I'll see you all on Thursday. Have a excellent weekend. Yeah, today's Tuesday. Oh, have an excellent day tomorrow, and then I'll see you on Thursday. Bye, everybody. End meeting for all. Art project idea. Oh, you said relax, huh? Non. I called you last year in my bed. Yes, it's me. Oh my god. High school fiction. I asked because there's 3 different copies in the jug fiction. Wondering if I should move it to high school fiction. I think The Wizard of Oz is okay. If you're still here, by the way, I give up. I hope you didn't give up. If you're still here, I think The Wizard of Oz, the one published in 1900, the original, is fine for middle school. Yeah, I wouldn't say that it need be moved into high school. There's nothing that's alarming. I mean, most of anything that is pretty brutal in it is pretty chill. You know what I mean? And by that I just mean like it's handled very like with like kind of sanitized wise, like in the same way that most older children's stories are. It doesn't shy away from a reality, but it also isn't gore, so it doesn't dive into it in a gorific way. It can just be a little bit alarming for children. All right, everybody, that's it for me.